holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella, starting with the weather report. Folks, happy April Fool's Day. Just watch yourself today. Periods of rain in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy and cooler today, a high of 46. Partly to mostly cloudy tonight with periods of rain late, low of 36. Cloudy tomorrow with a little rain, a high of 66. Friday, windy and warm with periods of rain, a high of 68 and a low of 45. For Saturday, a couple of showers, high 70, low of 46. For Sunday, morning rain, breezy, cooler, high of 51, low of 32. Monday, partly sunny, high of 43, low of 34. And for Tuesday, rain and snow, high of 45, low of 32. Sunrise was at 6:58 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 7:42 p.m. And folks, let me give you the snow totals now, since this is the first day of April. Who knows how much longer we'll be having this list here.
Always one in April.
Always
one.
Buffalo, season to date, 91.2 inches. Jamestown, season to date, 106.4. Rochester, 113.1. Syracuse, 139.9. Binghamton, season to date, 75.2. Albany, 56.2. Cleveland, 49.3. Toronto, 75.1. Pittsburgh, 51.6. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. Harvesting Collectibles kicks off demo phase. Owner of firm handling project calls work sad and emotional. The harvesting of the old Highmark Stadium is underway. That essentially started in February with Brandon Steiner's Collectible Exchange beginning to take down signs and goalposts from Highmark Stadium and then ripping up seats and benches from the concrete. The turf and other items around the stadium will soon follow, with the items put up for sale to fans wanting a piece of the old stadium where the Buffalo Bills played for 53 years. Combined with some of the prep work the Bills started last month to take apart suites and club areas, concessions, and some furniture and appliances, it all represents the first steps in getting the current stadium demolition ready. Steiner's company was retained by the Bills and Erie County to salvage any stadium elements with resale value. They will split the proceeds with more than $1 million expected to be made for the county. Buffalo's $2.2 billion stadium is slated to be substantially completed by July, while the old stadium will be demolished early next year. The Bills played their final game at the current stadium on January 4th. This is the first stage, and there's been some other work behind the scenes that's been done that the Bills are doing and has nothing to do with the products and stuff we're trying to get, Steiner said on Tuesday at Highmark Stadium. When you take a stadium like this down, there's a lot of preparation work. Steiner was about another a month to pull out items to be sold from the current stadium. He plans to be done by the end of April, then he'll start pickups and shipping for fans who have ordered items. He said he feels almost guilty sometimes for breaking down the stadium. He knows while fans are excited to get their memorabilia and get to see the new stadium, there are irreplaceable memories at the old one. Make no mistake, as exciting as it is to get everything out and into everyone's homes as fast as we can, it's sad and emotional, Steiner said. We know what's transpired in this stadium, the love, the connection, the family. It's almost a religious experience. The first priority for Steiner has been taking out seats and benches for season ticket holders who have purchased them. The seats began being pulled out in mid-March, while the bleachers were started only a few days ago. He said the company expects to sell between 6,000 and 9,000 standard seats, with upper-level seating at the stadium, all bleacher seats. There are only so many of the seats, so the stock is limited. Season ticket holders got first dibs at buying their seats and received a small discount. but anyone from the general public can still buy a pair of seats. Most of the turf and turf products are now sold out. The turf will begin coming out in a week or two, Steiner said. Goalposts have been removed and are being cut and manufactured for sale. Products and pieces of turf and goalposts range from coasters and plaques to utensil and pencil holders. Signs around the stadium began coming down in February, but some have been difficult to get to. Also, lights may be too tough to bring down and sell as well. Steiner said most section seats have been removed and will be on sale soon. There are several thousand signs that will be taken down from around the stadium. More than 35 trout urinals will be taken out from around the stadium and stored to be ready for sales. Some have already begun being removed. They are of high interest, and Steiner is still unsure how he will sell them. At least one will be auctioned off to raise money for charity, he said. Steiner is also launching new ideas as products continue to sell out and sales continue to surpass expectations. They'll include Bills legends Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas signed seatbacks and a licensing deal with former head coach Marv Levy to offer some products with the theme of "Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?" He's also planning some giveaway contests for some of the biggest Bills fans to help them win items and add to their fan caves. Additionally, Steiner is working on cutting wholesale deals with retailers to sell some of the stadium products. He's been in talks with Wegmans, David Adams, TSC Sports, and the Buffalo Store. That's BFLO. Bills fans have surprised me in a good way, but also a nervous way because people who were thinking about waiting to buy may be realizing that they can't get certain things as they sell out, Steiner said. Steiner has led the effort to sell items from around 10 professional sports stadiums and arenas that have closed or have been refurbished, such as Yankee Stadium, Texas Stadium, and Madison Square Garden. But his latest effort in Buffalo has him questioning everything he thought he knew from all his years in the industry. He has not seen anything like this demand and passion for the items that he has at Highmark Stadium. "This surpasses anything I've ever done," he said. "I consider this fan base the number one fan base I have ever dealt with, and I've been around doing this for 40 years. There's a high level of commitment and passion."
Thank you, Larry. State legislatures pass extender bill after failing to adopt budget. State lawmakers will miss their April 1st deadline to adopt a state budget for the seventh consecutive year, as Governor Kathy Hochul and legislative leaders remain at odds over insurance costs, the state's environmental review process, and how to address climate change goals. The state legislature passed an extender bill Tuesday of more than $1 billion to fund state operations from April 1st through April 7th. "It's March 31st. Do you know where your state budget is?" said Andrew Ryan, president of the Citizens Budget Commission, a fiscal watchdog group, in a statement. "Unfortunately, the budget is late for the fifth straight year. Deciding how New Yorkers' money is spent is one of the elected leaders' most important responsibilities. We are disappointed that missing this deadline has become the norm." The late budget leaves the city of Buffalo in a position of uncertainty about its level of state aid, as first-year Mayor Sean Ryan faces an April 15th deadline to submit a budget to the city's Common Council. The city, which faces budget deficits over the next 2 years in the tens of millions, would receive nearly $206.3 million under Hochul's $263 billion budget proposal. That figure includes a $40 million increase in aid. Ian Ott, a spokesperson for the mayor, said the administration is operating based on Hochul's budget. The budget plan proposed by Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Democrat of Yonkers, mirrored the governor's financial aid for Buffalo. The plan proposed by Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, Democrat of Bronx, added $16.8 million to the governor's proposed increase. "We knew a late budget was a possibility, which is why we sought a return to a May 1st due date for the city budget," Ott said. "It complicates things, but the administration has been planning with this challenge in mind." Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, Democrat of Buffalo, did not appear overly concerned about the lateness of the budget, which would cause problems for the city. Honestly, I've been here until August when there wasn't a budget and no city closed down. Not one in the state closed down. Neither did the state, Peoples-Stokes told the Buffalo News. So where there's a will, there's a way. Assemblymember Joseph Sempolinski, a Republican from Canisteo, who represents Allegheny and Cattaraugus counties, blamed the late budget on Democrats controlling both houses and the governor's office. Here we are again. If we need more evidence that one-party rule in Albany isn't working, this is it, Sempolinski said in a statement. Albany Democrats seem incapable of fulfilling the most fundamental role of government, and that's passing an on-time budget. These highlights more than anything else the need to restore common sense spending practices and to reform the state budget process. Heastie has opposed the inclusion of policy proposals being in the state budget. This year, in a policy proposal to address skyrocketing car insurance costs and fraud, Hochul proposed a cap on the amount of non-economic damages awarded to drivers who are uninsured, intoxicated, commit a felony, or leave the scene of felony incidents. In another policy proposal, Hochul wants to ease restrictions in the state's State Environmental Quality Review Act, known as SEQRA, saying it has led to delays, higher costs, and stopped housing from being built. In another policy sticking point, Hochul wants the state to have new deadlines to meet the goals of the Climate Act and CLCPA, which former Governor Andrew Cuomo signed into law in 2019. The CLCPA required the state to lower pollution causing greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. Hochul wants to delay that to 2040 and change the state's mechanism of measuring emissions. Without policy proposals, the budget would be done on time, Peoples-Stokes said. State lawmakers will stop receiving their paychecks now that the budget is late. Peoples-Stokes said lawmakers will not have to wait until August to get Hochul to understand that lawmakers' opinions are equally as valuable as hers and that they, like the governor, have elections in November. We care about the same interests of New Yorkers as she does. We have to run for office like she does, she said. So our opinion has to be heard, it has to be considered, and it has to be included as part of negotiations. I don't have any expectations, Peoples-Stokes said. I just hope it's like next week. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Council okays $1.7 million to settle suits against city. The Buffalo Common Council has approved more than $1.7 million in legal settlements, pushing the city over its budget for legal claims for the fiscal year. With the approvals, the city will have less than $500,000 left to cover liability costs, a figure that does not include the upcoming $3 million payment to the estate of William C. Sager Jr., the Air National Guardsman who died as a result of injuries from an altercation with an off-duty Buffalo police officer working security at the now shuttered Molly's Pub in 2014. Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope said the city will always have liability for mistakes that are made or faulty equipment. But she said she hopes the new administration will look for systematic flaws that will limit the city's legal liabilities in the future. My hope is that with the new administration looking at our policies, we can work through that, she said. With all 8 union bargaining units for the city employees currently or soon to be out of contract, she said the administration may have an opportunity to address some of the issues during contract negotiations. I'm hoping that with this administration and during the contract negotiations, we can be more deliberate in how we address these issues going forward to the best of our ability, Halton Pope said. The majority of the money, $1.3 million, will be paid out for lawsuits stemming from incidents involving the Buffalo Police Department. The settlements include $700,000 to Bruce McNeil, who filed a federal lawsuit in 2020 accusing officers John Davidson, now president of the Buffalo Police Benevolent Association, and Detective Patrick Gary, an officer at the time, of falsely accusing him of possessing crack cocaine after McNeil filed a complaint against the officers pulling him over and searching his car without cause, damaging the car in the process. The two lawsuits stemming from a 2018 car crash with Buffalo police officer Sarah Back, Jessica Wallace Sims will be paid $375,000, and Joseph Thomas will be paid $175,000. $245,000 to Randall and Denise Finan, who were injured in 2017 when a staircase inside a city-owned building on Humboldt Parkway collapsed. $100,000 to activist Miles Carter, who was tackled by Buffalo police and New York State troopers while live on air speaking to reporters during a protest outside a Bailey Avenue police station in 2020. The Sager settlement will push the city more than $2.5 million over its $4.3 million liabilities budget for the year, according to figures from the City Comptroller's Office. The overage makes the job of closing a year-end budget gap even more difficult. The deficit is estimated to be at least $24.5 million. Council members have grown frustrated with the many and expensive lawsuit settlements and awards paid out in recent years, with some calling for more accountability for city workers, particularly in the police department, for the liability incurred by the city tied to their actions. In addition to the Sager settlement, the city agreed to pay out $43 million to Chelsea Ellis in 2023, who was paralyzed from the neck down after being struck by a Buffalo police vehicle while walking down Main Street in North Buffalo in 2020. The city also paid $8.7 million in 2024 to the two living members of the Buffalo Five, a group of 5 men who were convicted of a city murder in 1977 as teenagers and spent decades in jail before having their convictions overturned. In a previous written statement to the news, Davidson said the reason the city so often settles lawsuits brought against officers is because the law department is short-staffed. Unfortunately, members of the Buffalo PBA, myself included, have no say over whether the lawsuits in which we're involved get settled or go to trial. The reality is that the city's law department is understaffed and couldn't possibly defend every case at a trial, even when members of the Buffalo PBA would like our day in court. Corporation Counsel Rosa Pisa, who came to City Hall with Mayor Sean Ryan's administration at the beginning of the year, said that in each case is different, and the lawyers in the office base their recommendation to settle or to go to trial based on factors such as the amount of potential exposure the city faces and the facts of the lawsuit. We have a lot of institutional knowledge in our office that we try to truly value. That can help guide these decisions, Pisa said. So it is just looking at the individual circumstances of a case and deciding on the right move.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:18. Today in history, on this date, in 1924, Adolf Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his role in the beer hall putsch in Munich. Hitler would serve just 9 months of the sentence, during which time he completed the first volume of Mein Kampf. In 1945, American forces launched the amphibious invasion of Okinawa during World War II. U.S. forces succeeded in capturing the Japanese island on June 22nd after a battle in which more than 240,000 died, including as many as 150,000 Okinawa civilians. In 1946, a magnitude 8.6 earthquake centered near Alaska's Aleutian Islands triggered a tsunami that pounded the Hawaiian Islands with waves up to 55 feet tall, killing 159. In 1976, Apple Computer was founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. In 1984, singer Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his father after Gaye intervened in an argument between his parents at their home. In 2001, the Netherlands became the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage. In 2003, American troops raided a hospital in Nasiriyah, Iraq, and rescued Army First PFC Jessica Lynch, who had been held prisoner since March 23rd. And in 1925, Senator Cory Booker, a Democrat of New Jersey, wrapped up the longest individual speech on the Senate floor at 25 hours and 5 minutes. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial. It's her job. Vinyl is being unfairly criticized as she fights for accountability. Jane Vinyl has taken no nonsense approach to her duties as an Erie County legislator, and her priorities are clear: serving her constituents. The Democrat asks tough questions of the Erie County Sheriff and refuses to back down, no matter how much political heat is heaped on her by the Republican Party, or for that matter, anyone who criticizes her approach. Good for her. Vinyl is doing her job. She's taking names, dates, times, and demanding more accountability from a department that has historically, especially under the prior sheriff, shunned responsibility. Now, with Vinyl's gaze squarely on current Sheriff John Garcia and his department, some opaque practices are starting to come into full view. As reported by the news, Sandra Tan, Vinyl has voted against a number of sheriff's initiatives that she said she considered duplicative, unneeded, or too expensive. The exception to this rule was her vote in favor of costly pension improvements for jail officers. But Vinyl's questions during Garcia's recent appearance before the legislature on March 12th have gained the most attention. Garcia defended his new policy regarding the use of take-home vehicles. Vinyl disputed Garcia's statements, calling them contradictory. Garcia contended that Vinyl was launching a political attack to further her own ambitions or carry water for other elected leaders. What should not be lost in the conversation here is that besides being a legislator, Vinyl is a civil rights lawyer. Asking tough questions and demanding straight answers is in her wheelhouse. So apparently, she is leading change. She chairs the legislature's Fleet Policies Committee, which was created after a comptroller's office audit criticized how the county manages its taxpayer-funded fleet of cars. The audit found a number of discrepancies, which included policy violations and abuses of the county's gas systems. The audit also criticized the lack of cooperation and transparency from the sheriff's office. The use of sheriff's office vehicles has been in the news since the case of Daniel D.J. Granville, their narcotics chief who crashed his county-owned pickup truck into 7 parked cars on Buffalo's Lower West Side in 2024. It took exposure by local news media a year later for the public to learn about the incident. Vinyl has been on the hunt ever since. She has raised objections to the sheriff's administrators, who are not sworn police officers, getting unmarked take-home cars. The public is curious about the same. Her determination to get to the bottom of sketchy policies has prompted strenuous criticism from Erie County Republican Party Chairman Michael Cracker about Vinyl spouting an anti-police rhetoric and far-left politics. The Police Benevolent Association isn't exactly thrilled with her focus on police policy and details either, particularly around the subject of unmarked cars. During an interview with WIVB, Vinyl said the sheriff has no unilateral authority to waste taxpayer money by giving crony employees free vehicles at the county's expense. She's not wrong. In fact, she's making a good point, but that didn't stop Cracker, the sheriff, and the union from highlighting her use of the term crony. Maybe the shoe fits. Vinyl is asking uncomfortable questions and demanding transparency and change. In other words, she's doing her job. She should be supported and applauded by her legislative colleagues.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons. The first one's by Adam Zeiglis of the Buffalo News. Before I describe it, information here. Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, is a proposed U.S. law that would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Okay, what we have here is a scene on a beach front. There's a lifeguard who happens to be a Republican, and he's been throwing the life flotation rings over the head and body of of a person who is labeled as 20 million citizens, and his or her arms and legs have been trapped in a whole tower of these rings around them. And she has lost a piece of paper which had a message on it which was vote. The second cartoon is by Tom Stiglich of Creators Syndicate. And if you remember the Hollywood sign out in California on the hillside, okay, this is a different sign on the hillside, and it says farewell, Farewell, and a caption reads, Los Angeles sees largest population decline in the United States. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Electric vehicles represent technological progress. With regard to the movement to have everyone drive EVs, I have no idea what the writer is referencing. No one expects a complete conversion to EV transportation immediately. Decades ago, there were no hybrid or EV vehicles available on the market. As people decide to replace old vehicles with new ones, I would hope they would look at all the options available on the market today, including EVs, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and traditional vehicles. That's what I did in 2025 when I bought my Chevy Equinox EV. The same goes for home heating and cooling options. We have more options now than we did 20 years ago. Before simply replacing a boiler, furnace, or AC unit, property owners should do some homework and look at all the new energy-saving appliances available. These types of conversions over time are not that different from what happened with phones. Many people gradually gave up landlines and bought battery-powered cell phones because they offered features that landlines never could. EV batteries are improving all the time, including safety, charging times, and distance traveled on a full charge. Range. Consumer Reports notes the average driver in the U.S. puts on 26 miles per day, so charging overnight at home is now the norm. The chance of having a fire in a car that runs on gasoline is 20 times greater than the chance of a fire in an EV. Those are the numbers currently available based on data from countries that have far more EVs on the road than we do in the U.S. My EV is much safer than my internal combustion vehicles ever were. This from Janet Linacek of Williamsville.
Thank you, Larry. Buffalo should not let Jamal depart. If Buffalo lets a premier investigator/entrepreneur like Doug Jamal leave our city, it will be a mistake we'll regret for the next 50 years. It will be the fault of politicians in Buffalo and Amherst who would not assist him in his various endeavors. Letting Jamal depart, when he is the only deep-pocket developer not sitting on his wallet, would be a mistake on the order of destroying Humboldt Parkway and then wanting to make a tunnel out of it, and not building a covered stadium in the downtown area. Our politicians make costly mistakes frequently, and losing Jamal would be one of the big ones. This is written by Dick Maurer of Hamburg. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Ridiculous that state pensions aren't taxed. In the Buffalo News, there was an article indicating some of the highest school employee pensions in New York State. The pensions are what they are, what they were bargained for, and what they were under the old Tier 1 program, which has been discontinued. What is an outrage is the amount of New York State income tax the recipients pay. Should two of the retirees with $300,000 plus pensions be married, the following example could be a reality. Gross New York pensions for husband and wife, two at $300,000, $600,000 total. Social Security benefits, two at $30,000, $60,000. 403B distributions, two at $20,000, $40,000. Total income, $700,000. Total New York income subject to New York State income tax, none of it. Working couple toiling for barely minimum wage, two at $25,000 or $50,000. Total New York income subject to New York State income tax, all of it. It's bad enough the taxpayers are funding these pensions, but the recipients avoid state income tax as well. There is no rationale for private sector pensions to be taxed and public pensions should be excluded. Where is the outrage? From Robert Carroll, CPA of North Tonawanda.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:29. Some opinion columns. This one is Another Voice, and it's about legislation, and it's written by Senator April Baskin, who represents District 63, and Assembly Member Harry Bronson, who represents District 138. New Yorkers with HIV need stable housing. Around 2,800 low-income New Yorkers with HIV remain homeless, according to the State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, despite a long-standing state public assistance program to help them obtain housing. While available in New York City, residents of Long Island and upstate are denied access to this housing program. This inequity is a matter of life and death. Treatment advances have transformed HIV from a death sentence to a manageable condition. But research shows that people experiencing homelessness lack the stability to benefit from HIV treatments, facing a staggering 27-fold higher rate of premature death. This is unjust and poor public health. Since 2014, new HIV diagnoses have dropped by 32% in New York City, compared with only 17% in the rest of the state. HIV is increasingly concentrated in communities of poverty, disproportionately impacting Black, Latino, and LGBTQ plus New Yorkers. In New York City, some 20,000 people with HIV who are eligible for public assistance rely on NYS HIV emergency shelter allowances to secure housing and a 30% rent cap. Yet other communities are shut out of the program because their localities cannot afford the standard 71% local share of these public assistance costs. There is a simple, voluntary, and cost-effective fix for this inequity. Providing 100% state reimbursement in counties outside New York City that choose to provide meaningful HIV emergency shelter allowances. This fix would save lives and dramatically reduce costly care, generating Medicare savings projected to exceed the state's housing investment. This fix makes it fiscally possible for communities to opt to provide safe, permanent housing for homeless residents with HIV rather than expensive emergency shelter. 5 heavily impacted upstate counties have told Governor Kathy Hochul they are ready to provide these HIV housing support. Hochul has rightly acknowledged that all communities need additional support from the state in the face of rising costs, increasing homelessness, and federal threats to social support systems, including this long overdue fix to the HIV emergency shelter allowance program in the fiscal year 2027 budget will save lives and continue the state's long-standing leadership in ending the HIV epidemic. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Following is from Elizabeth Shackelford of the Chicago Tribune. Once again, global oil crisis makes case for renewable energy. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter installed solar panels on the White House and introduced an ambitious solar strategy to Congress. This came on the heels of the oil shocks of the 1970s, caused first by the Yom Kippur War between Israel and Arab states and then by the Iranian Revolution, both Middle East crises that reverberated around the globe due to the region's central role in energy markets. Speaking of the new equipment, Carter said, "A generation from now, the solar heater can either be a curiosity, a museum piece, an example of a road not taken, or it can be just a small part of one of the greatest and most exciting adventures ever undertaken by the American people, harnessing the power of the sun to enrich our lives as we move away from our crippling dependence on foreign oil." Just imagine the world we would live in today if we had taken the latter path. We would be decades ahead on renewable energy development, likely the world's leading producer of affordable renewable energy products. Most of our industries and households could run on renewable power. Human-driven causes of climate change would be dramatically slowed or even halted thanks to green energy advances, so we would face less extreme weather and enjoy a healthier atmosphere. And our economy would not be held hostage by the fate of a 21-mile wide waterway, 7,000 miles from our shores. nor would we have need for 19 military bases across a region prized for cheap oil exports. The current pointless war with Iran might never have happened. But President Ronald Reagan had other priorities in 1981. He gratuitously ripped out the White House solar panels and slammed the door shut on Carter's grand solar initiative. He slashed funding for renewable energy research and development and tax breaks for solar and wind technologies, stalling the energy transition for decades to come. Why would a president abandon this investment in our energy security after the danger of a reliance on foreign oil was so nakedly exposed? The answer is the fossil fuel industry. One would be hard-pressed to find a better example of the dangers special interests pose to our national security than fossil fuels. President Trump's big, beautiful bill increased existing subsidies for the fossil fuel industry last year by $4 billion, for a total of $34.8 billion a year. That windfall makes the $445 million that fossil fuel companies spent in support of Trump's campaign look like a bargain, as their profits continued to soar. Not only have we not invested in it, but renewable energy hasn't even had a fair chance to compete. Thanks to the shale gas revolution that began in 2008, the U.S. is now the world's largest oil and gas producer, but the U.S. still imports 30% to 35% of the oil it consumes. Though we get little from the Middle East, the price of this global commodity depends on the global supply. When the price rises around the world, ordinary Americans pay for it while the big oil companies rake in record profits. This is the scenario playing out today with the entirely predictable crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump canceled some $35 billion in renewable energy projects, slashing subsidies for production and purchase of electric vehicles, and rolling back energy efficiency standards. This hasn't just left us more vulnerable to energy shocks, it has allowed China to take the global lead in the renewable energy transition. Carter's solar panels did end up in museums after all, instead of foretelling our energy independent future. Perhaps it's fitting that one sits in the Solar Science and Technology Museum in Dezhou, China, in the collection of the world's largest manufacturer of solar hot water heaters today.
Thank you, Larry. Excuse me. Some business and financial news. War pushes gas prices past $4 a gallon in the United States. U.S. gas prices jumped past an average of $4 a gallon for the first time since 2022 on Tuesday, as the Iran war pushes fuel prices to soar worldwide. According to Motor Club AAA, the national average for a gallon of regular gasoline is now $4.02, over $1 more expensive than before the war began. The last time U.S. drivers were collectively paying this much at the pump was nearly 4 years ago, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The price is a national average, meaning drivers in some states have been paying well over $4 a gallon for a while now. Prices vary from state to state due to factors ranging from nearby supply to differing tax rates. In the Buffalo-Niagara region, the average price topped $3.94 a gallon on Tuesday, up 87 cents since the end of February and the highest since September 2023. The rise in diesel fuel has been even steeper, jumping by $1.71 a gallon since the end of February to $5.65 a gallon, the highest since November 2023, according to AAA. Since the U.S. and Israel launched the joint war against Iran on February 28th, the cost of crude oil, the main ingredient in gasoline, has spiked and swung rapidly. That's because the conflict has caused deep supply chain disruptions and cuts from major oil producers across the Middle East. Both Brent crude, the international standard, and the benchmark U.S. crude are now going for more than $100 per barrel, up from roughly $70 before the war. Higher gas prices are impacting consumers and businesses as many households continue to face wider cost of living strains. And as drivers pay more to cover necessities like gas or even utility bills impacted by soaring fuel costs, many may be forced to cut their budgets in other places. Americans are spending hundreds of millions of dollars more on gasoline every day, said Patrick DeHaan, the head of petroleum analysis at the fuel tracking service GasBuddy. He said, has a negative impact on the psyche of the U.S. consumer, which carries consequences for the economy overall. Beyond visits to the pump, analysts point to groceries, which have to be restocked frequently and could also see price hikes as businesses' transportation and packaging costs pile up. Hauling other cargo and packages has also been impacted. The U.S. Postal Service, for example, is seeking a temporary 8% added charge on some of its popular products, including priority mail. It's going to mean more expensive bills for truckers, tractors, and trains that move the U.S. economy with diesel fuel. It's going to mean consumers are likely greeted by rising grocery prices and, broadly speaking, a rise in U.S. inflation, said DeHaan. If the war drags on, it's possible that these prices could tick up even higher. To Trump's frustration, most tanker movement in the Keys Strait of Hormuz, where roughly one-fifth of the world's oil once sailed through, has ground to a halt. That's led to cuts from major producers in the region who have no way of getting their crude to market. Analysts like DeHaan reiterate that all eyes are on the Strait of Hormuz, noting that if the waterway remains blocked for long enough, the U.S. average price for gasoline could climb toward $4.50 a gallon, or even approach the record $5 mark hit in 2022. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Uncertainty growing as markets fall flat amid war. As the Iran war intensifies, President Trump has prioritized efforts to calm the financial markets, trying to keep oil prices from exploding upward, stocks from cratering, and interest rates from surging. When the markets have flashed danger, Trump has been quick with social media posts or a remark to claim the war was launched last month could soon end. He's publicly declared that the markets are doing better than he expected, even with the S&P 500 stock index declining over the past 5 weeks and the global oil benchmark up roughly 60%. I thought oil prices were going to go up higher than they are now, Trump said at a Friday investor summit. And I thought that we would see a bigger drop in stock. It hasn't been that bad. With the Iran war, the White House has largely refrained from messaging more aggressively to voters about the economic consequences, choosing instead to try to contain any damage in the financial markets, which have swung wildly with the prospects of ceasefire or escalation in what has become a high-stakes guessing game about Trump's next moves. The Republican president showed the extremes of his messaging Monday before the U.S. stock market opened, writing in a social media post that great progress has been achieved on peace talks with Iran while also threatening civilian infrastructure such as desalination plants if a deal wasn't reached shortly. The White House sees the stock, energy, and bond markets as a way to indirectly reach voters. Trump has staked his economic agenda on cheap prices at the pump, robust gains in 401k accounts, and cheap mortgage rates. But that messaging appears to be wearing thin as the president's various pronouncements have done little to change the reality that a large chunk of the world's energy supplies is stranded by the conflict. Just 38% of U.S. adults approve of how he's handling the economy, and only 35% support him on Iran, according to a March survey by the Associated Press-NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. Gene Sperling, a top economic advisor in the Democratic Clinton, Obama, and Biden administrations, said voters can make a direct connection between prices at the pump and Trump's choice to attack Iran. He said, simplistic jawboning to the markets is insufficient for a public that is stuck paying the price as gasoline wars past $400 a gallon nationwide. Most advisors would say the president has to speak directly to the American people and fully acknowledge the economic pain that his policy has so directly caused in a short amount of time, and make a case for why the national security concerns justify it, Sperling said. You have a strategy instead of not recognizing or even dismissing people's economic pain. Trump's strategy of giving mixed messages has started to work against him, said Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, a professor at the Yale University School of Management and co-author of the new book, Trump's 10 Commandments, Strategic Lessons from the Trump Leadership Toolbox. The uncertainty is now soaring, Sonnenfeld said. As the messaging to calm markets with false reassurances is having diminishing credibility in financial markets, so too has Trump diminished public confidence. Graham Steele, a Biden-area Treasury official, said Trump's messaging techniques can work temporarily, but they have diminishing returns over time if they're detached from actual policies and results. We saw a lot of the volatile market reactions initially when he kept announcing these things and then walking them back, Steele said. The market reaction now is just a steady trend upward in prices, he noted, adding that the markets are not responding to it in the same way anymore.
Thank you, Larry. Job openings slide amid sluggish hiring. U.S. job openings fell last month to 6.9 million and hiring was weak, more signs of sluggishness in the American labor market. The Labor Department reported Tuesday that job vacancies slid from 7.2 million in January. The job openings and labor turnover summary showed that layoffs rose. Just 2.97 million people quit their jobs in February. Typically, people giving up their jobs is a sign of confidence in their prospects for finding better pay or working conditions elsewhere. The number of people leaving jobs last month was the fewest since August 2020. A measure of hiring also deteriorated. The report showed 4.85 million gross hires in February, the fewest since April 2020. The hiring rate, the number of hires as a percentage of employment, dropped to 3.1%, also the lowest since April 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic that shut down economic activity. The numbers show the labor market before the Iran war drove up gasoline prices and increased uncertainty. Christopher S. Rupke, chief economist at a financial research firm FWB Bonds, wrote in a commentary that the drop in openings as the Iran war started is not a good omen for the health and vitality of the labor market. Companies have grown more cautious as the price of gas has risen over $1 a gallon since the war began, and consumers have become much less confident. The U.S. job market has sputtered over the past year, reflecting the lingering impact of the high interest rates and uncertainty over President Trump's economic policies and the impact of artificial intelligence. Employers have added fewer than 10,000 net jobs a month in 2025, the weakest hiring outside a recession since 2002. This year started out with a decent 126,000 new jobs in January, but in February the U.S. lost 92,000 jobs. When the Labor Department releases March jobs numbers Friday, they're expected to show that hiring rebounded and that companies, nonprofits, and government agencies added 60,000 jobs this month. Despite sluggish hiring, the unemployment rate has stayed low at 4.4%. Economists refer to a low-hire, low-fire job market in which companies are hesitant to add staff but don't want to let go of the workers they have. There are growing worries that AI is taking over entry-level work and that companies are reluctant to make hiring decisions until they better understand how they are going to use AI. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Business Briefly, McCormick, Unilever to merge. New York spice and flavorings company McCormick announced on Tuesday that it's combining with Unilever's food division, which includes brands like Hellmann's and Knorr. Companies in the packaged food sector have struggled with inflation and changing consumer tastes in recent years and have taken strong actions to revitalize sales. The company maintained will be McCormick's name and leadership.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Dust Donald, Major Deborah Denise, March Brian, Markey Patrick M., Randall Carl, Reed Donald, Ross Turner Brenda, Sobasic Stanley G. Jr., Sobinski Sandra, Toke Janet, Jan L., Wan Mary Ann Nehuder, and a national obituary, Mary Beth Hurt, a Tony Award-nominated actor who starred on Broadway in Benefactors with Glenn Close and reunited with Close for the movie The World According to Garp, has died. She was 79. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars, happy birthday for Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. You are dignified, wise, and quietly confident. You are also positive, organized, and energetic. This year is about service, perhaps to family, because you might be a support for those who turn to you for guidance, comfort, and courage. It's important to take care of yourself. Aries, 2 stars. Today, the full moon is opposite your sign, which could create concerns about long-term commitment relationships. You might question how you function in them. Tonight, genuinely listen. Taurus, 3 stars. Today you are concerned with your work and your health because of the energy of the full moon. It's important for you to feel useful and productive. Tonight, get organized. Gemini, 3 stars. Today's full moon might create problems when dealing with your kids or romantic relationship, or it might even make you doubt your creative talents. Tonight, enjoy playful diversions. Cancer, 2 stars. You are a moon child, and today's full moon might make you feel caught between the demands of home and family versus the demands of your career and your external world. Tonight, relax. Leo, 3 stars. Pay attention to everything you say and do today because this is a mildly accident-prone day due to the full moon energy. Tonight, a meaningful conversation. Virgo, the full moon today takes place in your money house, which might trigger disputes with others about money or something that you own. Tonight, check your money. Libra, 2 stars. You like harmony in your surroundings. Although you're an excellent debater, you don't like confrontations. Tonight, you're strong. Scorpio, 3 stars. Today's full moon energy might create disputes with coworkers, healthcare workers, or a pet. Especially every full moon means energies are fighting. It lasts about 48 hours. Tonight, privacy. Sagittarius, 3 stars. You might encounter some difficulty when dealing with friends and groups today, especially if they are related to kids or anything to do with education. Tonight, be friendly. Capricorn, 2 stars. Today, a public argument might take place in which you're involved. It could be noticeable, or it might be a whispered argument in an elevator. Tonight, show respect. Aquarius, 3 stars. Steer clear of controversial subjects today because the full moon will only exacerbate things. People feel emotions today that override logic. Tonight, explore and learn. Pisces, 3 stars. Disputes or differences of opinions about shared property, taxes, or shared responsibilities are likely today because of the full moon. Tonight, check your finances.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Look out for this phone call scam. Dear Heloise, I know you warn people never to give out their personal information, but since this past Christmas, I've been blasted with phone calls from callers who claim to be from some fake government agency and are checking to see if I'm gullible enough to give out information about my Medicare card. I usually hang up on them, but not everyone knows that they are scammers. Who should I call? Who should I report these callers to in order to stop them? From Naomi. Naomi, try the Federal Trade Commission at reportfraud.ftc.gov. You're correct. We should never hand out personal information to anyone, but most especially to strangers over the phone. Thank you note sound off. Dear Heloise, I agree with Sandy from Tucson, Arizona about acknowledging the receipt of a gift. It would be nice to receive a thank you note for a gift, especially a monetary one, but alas, today this is not the usual response. After having had several cards and letters lost in the mail, which are especially disheartening when they were lost by FedEx and UPS, I now appreciate a note or email or text or phone call stating that the gift was received. Of course, if this is sent, then a quick thank you could be added, just a hint. Lately, I've stopped sending gifts, and sure as heck, I've received messages asking, "Did you forget my anniversary, or birthday, or graduation, wedding, etc.?" Omissions get noticed very quickly. From Valerie. Check the manual. Dear Heloise, it seems as though I could never find the manual that came with the appliances we bought. When I needed to know how to fix something or how to properly use an item, the manual always was lost or probably tossed out. Finally, I bought a 2-drawer filing cabinet, and I now keep the manuals there where we can replace until we replace the items we buy.
Ever heard of the internet? Those manuals are there.
That's true too, Larry. This has saved us a small fortune because we've managed to fix things ourselves rather than call for a repairman. Which is true, Larry, because you can actually download some of the missing manuals that you're
Virtually all of them.
They're there. Keep looking, folks. We now have a place for things such as our wills, marriage license, birth certificates, and other important documents. It sure beats having to hunt all over the house for these important papers. That's from Jill and Simon. And all grown up. Dear Heloise, I had to laugh when I read a letter describing millennials as if they were still teenagers learning basic life skills. Many people still use the term millennial as a shorthand for young adults, but this description is no longer accurate. Most sources define millennials as people born between 1981 and 1996. This means that the youngest millennials are approaching their 30s, while the oldest are in their mid-40s. Many millennials today have established careers, families, and homes of their own. The youngest adults who are now entering the workforce actually belong to Generation Z, which follows the millennial generation. It's interesting how generational labels can linger long after circumstances change. The group once described as kids has quietly become today's parents, professionals, and community leaders, and that's from C. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From the Political Notebook. Hesketh says Iran is still firing missiles. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Tuesday that Iran still retains the ability to launch offensive missiles a month into the war, even as the U.S. and Israeli forces have carried out sustained strikes aimed at degrading Tehran's military capabilities. Yes, they will shoot some missiles, but we will shoot them down, Hegseth told reporters during a briefing at the Pentagon. The acknowledgement underscores that despite weeks of intensive U.S. operations targeting Iran's missile infrastructure, the threat has not been fully eliminated and continues to be a factor in the military operation. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, told reporters at the briefing that the U.S. military remains focused on interdicting and destroying warehouses and building facilities that supply missiles, drones, and naval ships to Iran's forces. Thousands of American soldiers have been arriving in the Middle East as President Trump weighs the next steps in the conflict, while also signaling openness to a diplomatic resolution with Iran. Hegseth said those diplomatic talks are very real, but stressed that ground operations remained an option. Our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we can come at them with boots on the ground, and guess what? There are, Hegseth said. If we needed to, we could execute these options on behalf of the President of the United States and this department, or maybe we don't have to use them all. Maybe negotiations will work. He said, the goal is to remain unpredictable.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, April 1st on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan.
On to some local and regional news in a second.
Local news can always wait. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's harder to get to.
Here it is. Okay. All right. Yes, on to some local and regional news and a couple of shorts to start with. Blakeman is gaining on Hochul in new poll. 2 months ago, a Siena University poll showed Governor Kathy Hochul leading Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman by a commanding 26 points. On Tuesday, a new Siena poll showed Blakeman within 13 points of the Democratic governor and leading Hochul by 7 points among independents. The Buffalo-born Hochul led Blakeman 47-34, according to a survey of 804 registered voters conducted by the Siena Research Institute between March 23 and 26. And Candelario to retire after 3+ decades at Housing Authority. The Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority's second in command is calling it quits after more than 3 decades with the organization. Modesto Candelario, the agency's longtime assistant executive director, will retire April 3rd and be replaced by Nadine Marrero, who returns to the BMHA after serving as executive director of the City of Buffalo's Office of Strategic Planning under former Mayor Christopher Scanlon. Candelario was appointed to the authority's board of directors by former Mayor Anthony Masiello in 1994 and hired to his current role in 2003. Executive Director Jillian Brown placed Candelario's dedication to the authority's work in a written statement. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Ryan administration fires fleet manager. Mayor Sean Ryan's administration has fired its fleet manager. The administration source confirmed to the Buffalo News that James Cross, who held the position since 2023 and was rehired by Ryan at the beginning of the year, was terminated. Cross's termination was first reported by WGRZ-TV. Cross was hired in the wake of the 2022 in December blizzard, with Common Council members urging former Mayor Myron Brown to get a better handle on the city's vehicle fleets after leaders in the police department, fire department, and public works department complained that the state of their vehicles hindered their ability to respond during the deadly storm. Cross, reached by phone, said he had to think about whether he wanted to comment for this story, but declined to comment for the time being. Sources told WGRZ-TV he has filed a complaint with the Human Resources Department and that he had been disciplined by the administration. Claims the news outlet has not yet confirmed with the administration, according to their report. A city spokesperson told the Buffalo News they were working on gathering information regarding the termination and questions from the news, and confirmed that the administration plans to eliminate the position in the proposed budget for next year. Ryan has talked about the decrepit state of much of the city's vehicle fleet as he prepares to unveil his proposed budget, which he said will include a 25% increase to the tax levy, pointing to the vast capital needs of the city as a key factor in the need for the significant rise in property taxes. During the winter, about half of the city's snowplows were down for repair on many days, while a third of the garbage trucks are routinely out of service, and there are not enough roadworthy police cars for every officer to have their own vehicle on most shifts, causing them to have to double up. Police, fire, and the DPW each has its own fleet manager who is responsible for taking issues and the needs directly to the city's Department of Administration and Finance. The administration is exploring leasing vehicles for the police and other options for the rest of the fleet to update the equipment and avoid the issues caused by so many vehicles being out of service. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Some more shorts. Jury sentencing delayed after legal issue in other case. Sentencing strip club owner Peter Gerace Jr. was never going to be simple given the legal and factual disputes during his 9-week trial, his lawyers say. Now it has become even more complicated. Gerace's lawyer, Eric Sonine, and Mark Foti have asked U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo to delay Gerace's April 9th sentencing as a legal issue unfolds in his other criminal case, which is about 2 months from trial. At the court proceeding Tuesday, Villardo postponed Gerace's sentencing until April 24th, saying he was acting out of an abundance of caution to give Gerace every chance to make whatever arguments he wished to at his sentencing. This case has been around for a long time, and I don't want to put it off for a significant period of time, Villardo said. The complication arises from the government's case against Gerace and others over the fatal drug overdose of government witness Crystal Quinn in the summer of 2023. How another judge resolves the issue in his June 8th trial could have implications for Gerace's right to effective advice of counsel, according to recent defense filings in U.S. District Court. Villardo should consider that before sentencing Gerace on his December 2024 jury convictions of conspiring to commit sex trafficking, robbing a federal agent, distributing drugs, and tampering with a witness, all related to the federal investigation into his Pharaoh's Gentlemen's Club, Sonine and Foti said in a court filing. And from the Alan Pergament's column, Fredonia student wins knockout round on The Voice. SUNY Fredonia State University music major Lucas West won his knockout round on NBC's The Voice Monday to advance to the live semifinals of the reality singing competition series, singing a Billy Joel tune, New York State of Mind, while playing the keyboard. West was declared the winner by John Legend over Moses G., who sang the Marvin Gaye tune Let's Get It On. West, who is from the Rochester suburb of Fairport, is the latest Western New Yorker to compete in the NBC's reality singing competition series. He moved to the knockout round after his blind audition earlier this month, performing the Elton John tune Benny and the Jets with his battle round win over 14-year-old A.J. Robinson. West is a senior at Fredonia's College of Music, Theater, and Dance, and has a concentration in jazz studies. During Monday's show, he said he has taken a gap semester. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. EPA set to investigate lead-contaminated soil. Study by Open Buffalo found high levels in East Side samples. A study by a local nonprofit of soil contamination at some properties on Buffalo's east side has drawn the attention of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Open Buffalo, which conducted the study, announced Tuesday that the EPA will assess one east side property for lead in the soil. The federal agency will study lead soil levels around 858 East Ferry Street, as required by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which works with Open Buffalo, according to Alana Cadell-Talke, director of the DEC's Office of Environmental Justice. The property used to be home to the Michael Heyman Company, a lead and zinc smelting and refining company that operated from 1917 to 1978, but the area is now home to the True Bethel Townhomes. In 1998, the DEC tested the site and found high levels of lead. By November 2007, the DEC had spent more than $9.5 million to clean up the site as well as neighboring properties directly to the west. Announcement of the EPA's further assessment of the lead contamination around the former lead smelting facility came during a Tuesday morning press conference about Open Buffalo, which led the soil study, the Buffalo News reported in December. We're figuring out where the hazards specifically are and where they're heightened, and we're trying to get more and more folks aware of their situation and what kind of options they have, said Max Anderson, Deputy Director of Open Buffalo. In 2025, the nonprofit sampled the yards of 138 homes and took 429 soil samples. Of those, 92% exceeded the EPA's healthy limit of lead in soil of 200 parts per million. The average soil test result was 642 parts per million, according to the organization. Typical levels of lead found in soil not contaminated by former industrial uses can be between 15 to 40 parts per million. Some of the samples had lead results of around 4,500 parts per million. One showed more than 16,000 parts per million, according to Jim Golden, Open Buffalo's Director of Ecological Justice and lead researcher on the study. Golden was aided by Gregory Glover, Open Buffalo's Ecological Justice Specialist, who went to more than 3,500 homes on Buffalo's east side over last summer, asking to take the soil samples. Lead can be absorbed through the skin, but it can be ingested through fine dust particles that can be suspended in the air or by eating plants grown in lead-contaminated soil. Many small children also learn about the world around them by putting things in their mouth, including dirt. There is no amount of lead exposure that is considered safe. Small levels of lead ingested can lead to lifelong damage in the brain and nervous system. This can manifest in a young child's life as slowed growth, learning difficulties, hearing damage, speech impediments, and behavioral issues. Adults are also at risk from lead exposure and can develop high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, as well as brain, kidney, and reproductive health issues. The cause of lead contamination throughout Buffalo's east side is hard to pinpoint. Cars used to puff out exhaust contamination by leaded gasoline before it was phased out beginning in 1975. Buffalo's east side neighborhoods also used to be a booming industrial center for about 170 years, beginning in the 1820s. Old breweries, factories, and homes that once stood on Buffalo's east side have been torn down in recent decades, leaving behind vacant lots, potential laden with polluted lead. Additionally, there were at least 3 lead smelters on the east side in addition to the Michael Heyman Company at 858 East Ferry Street. The Lumen Bearing Company at 197 Lathrop Street was demolished in 2012. In 2015, the EPA took soil samples and found lead concentration ranging from 13 parts per million to 20,000 parts per million. The federal agency also tested around public properties, finding lead in nearly every sample. Some samples collected near homes about 2 blocks away from the former Lumen Bearing Company property had lead levels up to 1,400 parts per million, according to the EPA's 2015 tests. The Reliance Lead, Solder and Babbitt Company operated at 399 Genesee, according to the EPA records. The site is currently classified under the EPA Superfund cleanup program, although it's unclear as to whether any remediation has happened there. There also was the Lake Erie Smelting Corp. At 13 Eccles Lane, which likely conducted lead smelting between 1931 and 1959, according to EPA documents. In 2015, the EPA sampled the property and decided an emergency cleanup was needed as lead was found in the soil at concentrations up to 76,000 parts per million. Samples taken in the surrounding neighborhood, including an elementary school campus and residential properties, also found high levels of lead in the soil. Remediation work at 13 Eccles Lane was completed in 2020, and the property was later developed into a housing complex. Whether any surrounding residential, school, or commercial properties were ever remediated as a result of the EPA studies is unclear.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:14. On to sports. Bills set date for the first big event at Highmark. If you're eager to attend the first major event at the new Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, clear your schedule for the night of August 8th. Pete Goelli, COO of the Buffalo Bills, told the Buffalo News at the NFL league meeting that the team is planning to hold its annual return of the blue and red practice under the lights of the 60,000-seat stadium that, as of last week, is about 93% complete. We want to make it special, Goelli said at the Arizona Biltmore. The building will be full for an event like that, and having it on a Saturday, potentially in the evening, is going to allow us to ramp up do some things during the day and have more people there. We know how important this is. The Bills will hold smaller events in June and July to introduce members of the community to state-of-the-art facility. They'll have the opportunity to see the 360-degree canopy, entertainment spaces, upgraded suites, wide-open concourses, blue and red gradient-designed seats, and massive video boards. But the team's plan to hold major events in the summer of 2026 got delayed based on a timeline of construction. In recent years, the Bills hosted their blue and red practice on a Friday night, and they wanted to take a different approach to the stadium's opening. Scheduling the event for a Saturday night will allow a full day of activities rather than forcing fans to hustle to Abbott Road through rush hour traffic following a workday. Gwelly consulted with Bills coach Joe Brady and president of football operations Brandon Bean to ensure the date worked for their training camp schedule. Brady gave his full-throated support, as he wants to know what it's like coaching under the lights in a new building before the regular season begins. Players get extra reps on the grass field. Coaches ensure their game day communication is ready for home preseason games. Everyone can acclimate to their new surroundings. Brady attended an hour-long all-staff meeting last week in which Gwelly and other leaders in the organization delivered updates on the Bills' business operations, how the team revealed the massive bison sculptures that will be the centerpiece of Family Circle, and how the efforts by workers across the street will ensure the stadium will be completed on time. Having the red and blue on a Saturday night is really helpful from a fan perspective, but one of the things Joe wanted to do was get in on the grass and be under the lights so he could experience that, Gwelly said. When you talk about collaboration and alignment, having really candid discussions about, hey, what's important from a business standpoint? What's important for the football team? How do we bring those things together to make it work? That's a perfect example of that. The stadium's opening will be the next chapter in ownership's long-term vision for the Bills campus in Orchard Park. The 53-year-old stadium that closed with the 2025 NFL season is scheduled to be demolished in March 2027, and Gwelly said preliminary discussions have begun on how the team could develop that parcel of land to make the new home a year-round destination for fans. Next summer, the Bills have grand plans on how to fill the stadium and produce revenue. During his 2 years on the job, Gwelly has helped owner Terry Pegula bring more fans to the Buffalo Sabres downtown arena, KeyBank Center, through a wide array of events like concerts or Disney on Ice. The plan is to do something similar in a new Highmark Stadium each summer. The Bills aren't limiting themselves to concerts either. Though Gwelly is trying to book big-name musical acts, he also made it clear the building is open for business for different sporting events. And during the 27-28 NHL season, the Sabres are aiming to host an outdoor hockey game to mark 20 years since the first Winter Classic at the old Highmark Stadium. The event will likely be the Heritage Classic sometime in 2028, since it's difficult to schedule a hockey game on the grass field in early January. But discussions with the NHL have inspired optimism that the Sabres will land the event. I would expect the summer of 27 to be really big, Gwelly said. Not only are we looking at concerts, we're looking really at everything for that stadium. You know about the draft. We would love to host college football games. We'd love to host potential soccer events. We're open to any major tournaments that we might be a good fit for. That's kind of trying to evolve over time, but I would anticipate a number of big events to be there for the summer of 27. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to hockey, and last night the Sabres beat the Devils 4-3. Actually, they were ahead 4-2 with a last-second goal and bringing it to 4-3. So it wasn't as close or as far as it sounds. Maybe even closer or farther, depending on your point of view. Next game, Ottawa Senators on Thursday. Anyway, headline. With decision looming, UPL not changing approach for now. Goalie will not reinvent the wheel with playoff berth in sight. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen doesn't plan to change much, if anything, as the Buffalo Sabres enter April and move toward clinching a playoff berth. The Sabres goalie has rotated starts with Alex Lyon since the NHL resumed its season after the Olympic break at the end of February. But Luukkonen manned the starter's net during an optional morning skate Tuesday at KeyBank Center. It could be an indication that the Sabres could be moving toward designating Luukkonen as their primary starter. Something may change. Luukkonen likely will not. At this point of the year, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, Luukkonen said of his personal preparation. You just want to be back to what has been working for you and repeat that. The Sabres hosted the New York Islanders on Tuesday night. Again, they won at KeyBank Center. Coming out of the Olympic break on February 25th, Luukkonen made his first start since returning from a lower body injury he sustained January 27th in the first period of a 7-4 win at Toronto. Luukkonen made 28 saves in a 2-1 win at New Jersey, a game that became part of the Sabres using a rotation of Luukkonen and Lyon in goal over the next 17 games. Colton Ellis as the backup. Since February 25th, Luukkonen is 7-1-1 in 9 starts with a .928 save percentage and a 2.21 goals against average with 1 shutout. Lyon is 6-1-1 in 8 starts since February 27th with an .898 save percentage, a 2.60 GAA, and 1 shutout. Luukkonen has found a positive in the rotation. It has kept him fresh. It's easier on the body and the mind and psychological weight of playing the bulk of a team's games. The rotation has been fine, Luukkonen said, especially on back-to-back nights. If you get the second night, you don't have to be backing up. You don't have to be preparing for the first game. You can just focus on the second game. The Sabres entered Tuesday with 98 points in the second in the Atlantic Division behind Tampa Bay and are within reach of clinching the franchise first playoff berth since 2011. The Sabres, though, may start making lineup choices once they clinch a playoff berth. That includes a choice in goal, but Coach Lindy Ruff isn't giving much away in his plans, and he won't divulge yet whether he will go with one goalie or continue with the tandem of Luukkonen and Lyon. I'll say this again, both our goaltenders have played incredibly well for us, Ruff said. I'm not putting one label on anybody, and I know that to get to this point and the amount we've used both guys, they're both number ones. I'm hopeful that they both keep playing really well, and then I have an option 1 or one option 2. That's all I hope for. I hope whoever dresses plays well and makes the decision even tougher for the next game. Luukkonen, though, isn't ready to tinker or overhaul in response to whatever decision may unfold. You don't change anything, Luukkonen said. You know what's been working for you, and we've played enough games and we've played long enough to know our own process and what's worked for us, and just kind of keeping it on the trusting level. Lineup update. The Sabres recalled defenseman Zach Metsa from the Rochester Americans Hockey League on Monday. Metsa played in 3 games with the Mercs from Friday to Sunday and registered 10 shots on goal and 2 penalty minutes. As I've said all along, he's part of our group, Ruff said of Metsa, who has 2 goals with 4 assists and is plus 20 in 38 games with the Sabres. You look at every game and you give whatever gives you the best chance to win a game, and whether that night's you need a physicality or you need whatever you need. We make that decision on a lineup, and his numbers and how well he's played speak for themselves, and I've already said how well I thought he's played. Ruff said Metsa and left wing Jordan Greenway, sports hernia, were options to go into the Tuesday lineup against the Islanders. Both played. That was my introduction. They both played. Greenway has averaged 12 minutes and 23 seconds of ice time in 33 games this season, but hasn't played since January 22nd. He has been on injured reserve since February 25th, but resumed skating in practice on March 24th.
Thank you, Larry. Kincaid is back, and next challenge is keeping him healthy. The expected is now official. The Buffalo Bills have exercised the 50-year option on tight end Dalton Kincaid's rookie contract, President of Football Operations and General Manager Brandon Beane said Monday at the NFL's annual meeting at the Arizona Biltmore. Picking up Kincaid's option for the 2027 season was an easy call for Beane. The tight end will count $4.272 million against the salary cap in 2026, and that number will roughly double to $8.162 million for the 2027 season. Now comes the hard part. The team has to keep him healthy. Kincaid, 26, was named to his first Pro Bowl following the 2025 season, finishing with 39 catches for 571 yards and 5 touchdowns. The Bills went 10-2 in the regular season in the 12 games Kincaid played, with one of the losses coming in a game he left early, Week 10 against the Miami Dolphins due to injury. The offense averaged 30.5 points in the games Kincaid played. Conversely, the team went 2-3 in the 5 games Kincaid missed, with the offense scoring just 23 points per game, more than a touchdown drop in production. That's a stark difference that points to Kincaid's importance to the offense. The problem the last 2 seasons has been availability. He missed 4 games in 2024 because of injuries to both knees, and the 5 games missed in 2025 stem from oblique, hamstring, and knee injuries. He's a difference maker, Bills coach Joe Brady said. You feel it in the critical moments. Josh Allen looking his way. You want him out there. Kincaid revealed at Brady's introductory news conference after taking over as head coach that he played through a torn PCL in his knee during the 2025 season. The injury did not require surgery, meaning the Bills have formulated a plan with the team's strength and conditioning and sports science departments on how to best prepare Kincaid to get through the entire 2026 season. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Faith in his ability. Murdoch is hoping to follow other recent UB players into the NFL. Following a short-lived workout at the UB Bulls Pro Day Tuesday afternoon, linebacker Red Murdoch said he planned to leave his draft position in God's hand. Murdoch, whose ankle is still hindered from a play during the Bulls' 28-21 win at UMass on October 18th, ran the 40-yard dash during UB's Pro Day Tuesday, but tweaked his ankle, and from there he did not anticipate or participate in many of the remaining workouts, as many NFL teams sent representatives to the Murchie family fieldhouse. Murdoch, the Petersburg, Virginia native who piled up 362 tackles, 17 forced fumbles over 4 years at UB, was among 15 former Bulls participating Tuesday, whereas UB's top prospect from last year, All-American linebacker Sean Dolek, went undrafted and had to fight his way onto the Los Angeles Rams roster. Dolek played in all 17 games, mostly on special teams. Murdoch is going anywhere between the 5th and 7th rounds. Murdoch spent time between full-on workouts with John Oper, who also trained Dolek and other Western New Yorkers, including Joe Andreessen, Steve Means, and even Khalil Mack on their way to the NFL, and pausing to rehab his ankle in the weeks leading up to UB's Pro Day. Absolutely, it's frustrating, said Murdoch, himself an All-American and the NCAA's record holder for career forced fumbles with 17. He broke Mack's record. But like at the same time, we did all the work and everything else is in God's hands. We got to live with the results. Did what you could. Leave it all there. No stone unturned. According to Pro Football Focus Draft Board, Murdoch is the 17th rated linebacker in the upcoming NFL Draft. The 3-day event begins April 23rd in Pittsburgh. PFF ranked Murdoch as the 208th overall player in the upcoming draft after leading the nation with 142 tackles. In 2024, Murdoch's 156 tackles were second to Dolek, a former West Seneca East star and All-American at UB who went undrafted in 2025. Though undrafted, Dolek found a role with the Los Angeles Rams, making plays on special teams before finding time with the defense. Along with Andreessen's path to the Buffalo Bills, Murdoch finds solace in knowing his former teammates found a way to the NFL even without being drafted. Dolak didn't get drafted. Nevertheless, he's still in the league and he still has a firm spot on his team, Murdoch said. I completely understood at that point. When Dolak got his spot, all he needs is his foot in the door. That's all I need. And thank God, Joe and Dolak, they were able to kind of get a little bit of limelight toward me. And so I don't have to go through as much of the politics that he had to go through. So I'm not really worried in that aspect. I know what comes with being at a smaller school, but I love the city and I'm going to continue to do as much as I can that I can control. All the other stuff, there's no need for me to worry about it. Murdoch received an invite to the NFL Combine in February, but did not participate in workouts. He spoke to all 32 NFL teams. Murdoch said he's trained with Oprah 6 weeks a day. 6 days a week. Wow, that would be a long day. He's even changed his diet, drinking lots of water in glass bottles and eating organic and grass-fed food. Murdoch said it takes self-discipline, but he likes the challenge. I've been trying to leave no stone unturned, Murdoch said. That's the way I go at it. Do whatever I can and leave the rest to God. Murdoch said he has watched plenty of NFL film this offseason, anxious for the opportunity to punch out more footballs from professional running backs. Whenever I watch any NFL tape, as far as seeing the football, it's like golden and screaming at me to punch it, Murdoch said. So I'm going to always watch how someone is carrying the ball. Nevertheless, I haven't seen any substantial differences in how NFL versus college players handle it. Along with Murdoch at UB's Pro Day were Buffalo natives Dottie and James Carrington III, Trevor Brock, Solomon Brown, Jonathan Capo, Mitchell Gonser, Gunnar Gray, L.J. Henderson, Jack Howes, Taquan Robertson, Carson Slee, Kobe Stewart, Jake Tim, and Malin White. I think now I'm trying to prove that I'm not the underdog, Dottie said. I think coming from high school to college, I never thought I was an underdog because, everybody at their high school that makes it to college to play football is usually the best guy on their team, or at least really good against other opponents. But now, it's a totally different game.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 10:32. On to Asking Eric. A strange sister doesn't know other families still in contact. Dear Eric, I have two sisters. Betty and I had a serious falling out a few years ago. She won't speak to me. She has cast herself as a victim in a situation where my other sister's husband became abusive to me. My heart is broken. Betty and I were very close all our lives before that happened. Betty has two sons. She is estranged from one. The other, Alan, has a child named Rita. I live in a state far away from Betty, Alan, and Rita. I haven't seen Rita since she was about 2 years old. She won't remember me, but I have been sending her birthday cards every year. Rita turns 10 years old in a few weeks, and I'm wondering if I should stop sending her cards. She's getting old enough to wonder who this is. I don't know if Alan knows about the rift between his mother and me, or if he does, if he has explained anything to Rita. Do you think I should continue to send this child birthday cards? I don't want to upset her, her father, or her grandmother. I might never see any of them again because I would not be welcomed by my sister. I guess I really don't mind backing out of their lives altogether to keep the peace, but I also don't want to shine a light on the problem by stopping the cards if by chance Alan does not know about the situation. I'm confused about the right path to take. What are your thoughts, please? From Invisible Aunt. Dear Aunt, I don't think a conversation with Alan is out of bounds here. You and he and your sister are all adults, and as such, able to navigate having separate relationships. He may wish to set a boundary with you in order to keep the peace with his mother, but it's better to find out that directly rather than to assume. Even though you don't know Rita, you've extended your generosity and love to his family through these cards for nearly a decade, so there is already a relationship. This isn't to say that they owe you anything, nor you them, but some of the confusion you're feeling may stem from the one-sidedness of the relationship. It's fine to get an understanding of the other side. You can practice discretion when talking about the fractured relationship with Alan's mother, if you'd like. It's probably best not to get too deep into the specifics anyway, just because they distract from the true focus of your conversation. But this story is yours too. You don't have to hide it. If it would be meaningful to you to continue to reach out to Rita, tell Alan that and ask if it would be meaningful to him and his family as well. Dear Eric, I would love your input. My stepson has cut his dad out of his life because he would... Pardon me, folks, this is reality. This is not April Fool's. I would love your input. My stepson has cut his dad out of his life because he will only inherit $1 million when his dad passes. My stepson makes almost $500,000 a year, and he is upset that his dad will donate money to me and our local hospitals. What do you think? I'm curious, stepmother. Dear stepmother, it's likely that there is something else underneath this conflict between your husband and his son. Sure, it could be just the money, especially if the son had assumed he'd be receiving far more than $1 million. But for him to take such a drastic action suggests there are other sources of frustration in this relationship. They may be justified, they may not. There's probably a bit of both, and in this situation. Your husband should try to have a lay-it-on-the-table conversation with his son. It's possible that there's resentment about the money going to you or to charities. Your stepson may feel that it's his entitlement. Even though he makes a very good living, he may have counted his chickens before they hatched, as it were. Or he may have grander plans that match the lifestyle in which he was raised. Those are all feelings or intentions he has to reconcile on his own, however. Your husband can do whatever he wants with the money. This shouldn't be a reason to dissolve a relationship, though. When it comes to inheritance, money talks, but it mumbles sometimes. So your husband would do well to clarify what his intentions are and what he hopes to accomplish with the money. He doesn't need to justify himself to his son, but for the sake of the relationship, he might want to open himself up to conversation. It's ultimately not about the money. Your stepson can make it about the money, of course, but there's an opportunity to be clear with each other before it's too late. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The following is analysis from the front page. Iran still a stubborn foe after absorbing punishing assaults. Beirut. Since the United States and Israel launched their war against Iran on February 28th, the Trump administration claims to have all but obliterated the Islamic Republic's military capabilities. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declared last week that never in recorded history has a nation's military been so quickly and so effectively neutralized. But after more than a month of punishing U.S.-Israeli airstrikes, a degraded Iranian military nonetheless remains a stubborn foe. Its steady stream of strikes against Israel and Gulf Arab neighbors are causing regional chaos and an outsized economic and political shock. Its missiles continue to penetrate Israeli airspace and kill civilians. Its cheap drones slip through its neighbors' air defenses, shattering Gulf Arab nations' carefully curated images of invincibility and wounding U.S. troops. Its threats to attack oil and gas tankers strangle the Strait of Hormuz, sending gas and energy prices soaring. President Trump has sought negotiations and threatened extreme destruction in hopes of securing Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium and compelling it to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. To maintain its leverage, Iran just needs to withstand the conflict long enough to pressure Washington to seek an off-ramp, experts say. Their strategy is to try to cause sustained pain and to drive up the cost of the war for the U.S., said Kelly Grieco, an expert in U.S. military strategy and operations, who was a senior fellow at the Washington-based Stimson Center think tank. Since the first day of the U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign, officials from both countries have repeatedly pointed to a steep drop-off in Iran's firing of ballistic missiles as proof of their efforts to destroy launchers and weapons stockpiles were working. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane told reporters on March 4th that Iran's ballistic missile shots fired are down 86% from the first day of fighting, and their one-day attack drone shots are down 73%. At a press briefing 2 weeks later, Hegseth said the volume of Iran's ballistic missile attacks had dropped 90% since the start of the conflict. On Tuesday, Hegseth told reporters at the Pentagon that in the past 24 hours, Iran had fired its lowest number of missiles and drones, though neither he nor Kane had any updated percentages. Trump said Tuesday on Truth Social that Iran has been essentially decimated. Claims of a slowdown in Iranian strikes are backed up by independent data from the Armed Conflict and Location Event Data, ACLED, a U.S.-based group that tracks conflicts around the world. On March 1st, the second day of the war, Iran fired off almost 100 strikes. The next day, its strike count dropped to 53, and it hovered at that rate for the next few days. In the 3.5 weeks since March 6, ACLED data showed that Iran hasn't fired more than 50 strikes on any given day. A strike in ACLED's methodology can include multiple individual strikes in the same location of the same day. Iran has maintained an average of 30 strikes each day for the last 3 weeks, and at various points it has picked up its tempo of attacks. That makes me question whether it's a capacity issue or a strategy issue, Greco said of the initial decline in Iran's strike rate. In other words, Iran may not be running out of firepower as much as deliberately rationing its missiles and drones. ACLED data shows that some 40% of Iran's salvos across the region are breaking through air defenses, signaling strain on American and Israeli supplies of interceptors. Iran has been deploying fewer missiles but more low-flying drones that are harder to intercept. We are vaporizing billions of dollars in long-range anti-missile defenses, which are scarce national resources, said Tom Caraco, the director of the Missile Defense Project at the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies. The danger, Caraco said, is that the U.S. and Israeli could run out of interceptors before they are able to take out the rest of Iran's missile stockpiles and mobile launchers, an objective that has proven maddeningly difficult. Over a month into the war, Trump administration officials continue to refer to the first 72 hours as their point of comparison for claims about Iran's crippled capacity. A good percentage of Iran's missiles, at least half of the arsenal, is stored at very hardened facilities that are not easily reachable with air power, said Farzan Nadami, an expert in the Iranian missile program at the Washington Institute. It looks like the Americans and the Israelis have been underestimating some level of complexity, Nadimi said. Contrary to Hegseth's characterization of the Iranians as flailing recklessly by striking civilian and energy infrastructure across the Arabian Peninsula, analysts say Tehran appears to have fine-tuned its timing and targets to maximize damage. They have been able to strike targets more efficiently and therefore use fewer missiles to achieve the same result. Iran has increasingly concentrated its firepower on sensitive sites like oil pipelines and water desalination plants across the Persian Gulf in a bid to impose settlement on the U.S., hitting nearby states like the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait hardest. Last week, Iran fired ballistic missiles and drones at a Saudi airbase, wounding more than 24 U.S. troops and damaging aircraft. In this asymmetrical war, the most important thing for Iran is to attack the world economy in hopes of coercing the U.S. to stop, said Asaf Aron, a retired Israeli brigadier general and senior researcher at the Institute for National Studies. This has become more important to Iran than attacking Israel, which views this war as existential and won't be dissuaded, Orion said. How long Iran can sustain its current level of retaliation remains unclear, as U.S. and Israeli intelligence on Iran's missile and drone inventory is limited. Military experts for both countries offer varying estimates on the remaining arsenal, but agree that Iran most likely still has thousands of cheap, locally manufactured drones that it can deploy to menace U.S. allies, even if much of its mid-range ballistic missile capacity has been destroyed. Iran built itself to be able to ride a war like this out, said Caraco. It has been preparing for this. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Nearly 2,500 deported in Blitz. Majority had no criminal record. This is written by Joe Mayer of the Chicago Tribune. Newly released data shows that Operation Midway Blitz led to the deportation of nearly 2,500 immigrants, most of them with no criminal record, during last fall's immigration enforcement surge that fueled massive protests and led to 2 shootings, 1 deadly. A Tribune analysis of the data released Monday offers the first comprehensive look to date of the roughly 3,800 people detained and what happened to them after they were picked up in a 2-month operation that included often masked and heavily militarized agents using forceful tactics during their controversial roundups that spurred chaos-filled scenes and led court orders to limit agents' unconstitutional actions. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security did not immediately respond to a request for comments on a Tribune's analysis, but in the past has lauded the operation as part of what it characterized as a historic win in the fight against violent, criminal, illegal alien crime. Critics have called the operation a massive unconstitutional overreach that foretold of the chaos in Minneapolis, where similar crackdowns spiraled into agents killing 2 protesters and prompted President Trump to suggest a softer touch going forward. In some ways, the latest data released on Operation Midway Blitz confirms what has already largely been gleaned through earlier data releases and court records, that the Trump administration's insistence it was targeting the worst of the worst conflicted with the reality of arrests mostly those with no criminal record. But the data also offers a first full accounting of the operation with some new details on who was commonly targeted. How many people were detained? DHS said in mid-December that Operation Midway Blitz had ensnared more than 4,500, but it refused to release details on the vast majority of those it said it had arrested. What it released shows a broad definition of what it includes: the number of those arrested, such as counting truckers arrested by Indiana State Police working with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The newly released ICE data, provided under the public records request to the research group Deportation Data Project, offers a more precise way to arrive at the figure for the Chicago area. The Tribune analyzed the raw case-level data to study those booked by federal agents into ICE's processing center in Broadview or its South Loop office. In that more narrow look, the analysis found 3,790 bookings from the day the operation was announced, September 8th, until the day the main surge began winding down, November 10th. The data shows another 130 detentions during the 3-day December surge when then Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino briefly returned to Chicago. Since then, the level of detentions has slowed closer to levels seen during earlier months of Trump's second administration before the Blitz was announced. What were their criminal backgrounds? When Trump's DHS announced the operation, it said it would target the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens in Chicago, and then named 11 of the worst that it said were at large after Illinois' so-called sanctuary policies required their release from jails and prisons against ICE's request to hold for deportation. The Tribune found one DHS news release that mentioned ICE had arrested one of the 11. DHS refuses to release lists of all those it has arrested, and when asked earlier this year how many of the 11 have been arrested, DHS did not respond. What data is available shows the vast majority of those arrested in the operation had no known criminal record. The released data does not include names of those detained, but each time someone is booked, ICE categorizes the person's criminal history. The Tribune analysis found that of all those detained, 60% had no criminal history, similar to previous findings in the first half of the Blitz's main phase. The analysis found that, for sure, The daily pace of detentions exploded under Trump, skyrocketing during Operation Midway Blitz to nearly 30 times the pace of former President Joe Biden's last year in office. But as Trump's DHS swelled its immigration jails, significantly smaller shares of those were people with any type of criminal conviction, dropping from at least half the people detained during Biden's last year to just 15% during the Operation Midway Blitz's main surge. Focusing just on those with listed criminal convictions, the analysis found that during Operation Midway Blitz's main surge, DHS did double the pace of detentions of immigrants with violent felony or sex convictions compared with Biden's last year. But the vast majority of those detained with convictions during the operation were for other types of crimes, and since the main surge ended, the pace of arrests of immigrants with violent felony or sex convictions had dropped to levels near Biden's last year in office. What were their nationalities? The Biden administration saw a different kind of chaos, with the number of people crossing into the United States reaching record levels, more than double Trump's first term, who were mostly seeking asylum in an already backlogged system. Cities like Chicago, long a haven for Mexican immigrants with ties to family and a community, became landing spots for immigrants from increasingly impoverished and authoritarian places such as Venezuela. The politics helped elect Trump, with his pledge of mass deportations winning support even among some longtime Mexican immigrants who felt forgotten by Democrats who'd lavished attention, money, and work permits on new arrivals. But much of DHS's enforcement centered on Little Village, known as the Mexico of the Midwest, where protesters regularly confronted agents, including a time Bovino was chided by a federal judge for being misleading or outright lying about why he hurled a tear gas container into a crowd of protesters in violation of a prior court order. The data and analysis shows the operation of detained, undocumented Mexican immigrants more than any other nationality, with more than 3 times as many Mexican immigrants detained than those from Venezuela. Digging deeper into the data on Mexican nationals, the analysts found that the most detained were in their 40s or older. 4 were in their 70s with no listed criminal history. ICE's data doesn't list how many years each detainee had been in the country before being arrested, but ICE data also shows that the age group most likely to be arrested at the border are those in their 20s, suggesting many of the Mexican nationals ensnared in the Chicago operation had been in the country for years, if not decades. The data does show a fraction of detained Mexicans, 32 of 1,797, had convictions for violent felonies or sex crimes, the type of immigrants lacking a legal status that the Trump administration had said it was targeting. But still, most of those booked, 850, had no criminal record. So who's been deported so far? This can be harder to answer because the data is accurate as of March 10th, and some deportations don't occur until months after someone is detained. That said, the analysis documented the deportations of at least 2,479 who have been detained during the main surge of Operation Midway Blitz. Some of those deported were Mexican nationals. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. President lashes out at U.S. allies. Complaining of Straits closure, he tells them to go get your own oil. Dubai. United Arab Emirates President Donald Trump lashed out Tuesday at allies who have been unwilling to do more to support the U.S. war effort against Iran, telling them to go get your own oil, and declaring that securing the Strait of Hormuz is not for us. The president claimed the American military will be done attacking in 2 to 3 weeks and said the U.S. will not have anything to do with what happens in the strait that has been closed by the Islamic Republic. Instead, he told reporters the responsibility for keeping the vital waterway open will rest with the countries that rely on it. There's no reason for us to do this, Trump said. That's not for us. That'll be for France. That'll be for whoever's using the strait. The White House said Trump would deliver a primetime address Wednesday evening to update the public on the war. The aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush deployed Tuesday and is slated to go to the Middle East along with 3 destroyers, 2 U.S. officials said. The carrier strike group consists of more than 6,000 sailors. It came as thousands of soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division also began arriving in the Middle East, according to 2 other U.S. officials who, like the others, spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive military plans. While the majority of those troops are part of a rotation of forces planned before war, some are among the 1,500 paratroopers the Trump administration decided to surge into the region last week. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, April 977th. April Fools. It's April 1st. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe, especially on April Fool's Day.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.